at our restaurants, have around 500 employees during the peak part of the year. So keep very busy, but this particular restaurant, a friend of mine actually owned a little restaurant here called the Lotus Valley restaurant that sat right here. And it was a Chinese-Mexican restaurant, kind of, interesting combination they had going there. But anyway, he asked me to come over and take a look at his restaurant and see if there's anything that I could suggest to him to help. And this was probably in about 2012. So anyway, I came over and looked, and as I walked around his building, I saw a couple of the hotels that sat next door that were very old, built in the 70s, motels that had been run down pretty bad. But what I actually saw was an amazing piece of property with all three of them combined that could be made into something a lot better here on Highway 76. So within a couple of weeks, we owned all three properties and bulldozed them down and built this. This is an idea basically of a combination of a lot of things. My kids are very creative. They're now 22 and 17, but they had a lot of ideas. Of course, we had a lot of ideas that didn't work, that weren't very good. You know, but one of my ideas was to bring people in and with the Italian restaurant theme, maybe put them in a gondola and give them a little ride and then get them out and take them to their table. And, you know, long we thought about some people being able to get around, that wasn't a very good idea. So we went with what we have now. There's 7 different dining rooms in the restaurant. It's basically themed from a city in the 1930s. So everything you see, even the brick and the concrete, is aged to fit the theme from that era. All the dining rooms are themed differently, but it's all the same menu throughout the place. Very reasonably priced. There's over 130,000 bricks in the place. Of course, there's a wine cellar in the front that's kind of cool and fun. I would say it actually only took about a year to build the place. All in all, it's a little over 18,000 square feet, and it just is, between the rooftop dining that's above us and the trolley car up there. You'll see different names throughout the place. That's all mostly family members that we have their names throughout. The only exceptions are the trolley car. The gentleman that built my house and this place and the chicken house and several other big projects for us, his name's Tom Caruso. Great guy. Interesting story though, about once a week he'd come into the project and just lose it, and every other word was an F-bomb. You know, he's just a great laid-back guy, but the stress would get to him. So I had the little sign above the trolley car made for him as a tribute to him and unveiled it like when we did the grand opening for the place. But if you see, it's called the Thomas F. N. Caruso trolley car. And that's my little tribute to him and his little temper tantrums that he had about once a week there. So Thomas F. N. Caruso trolley car. So any questions about the place up to this point? Anthony can answer a lot of stuff. The main street out here, again, a big city from the 1920s. You'll see grates down in the sidewalks down there. When we originally opened the place, those are on a system that steam and fog comes up out of them to give you the feeling of being like on a street in New York in the 1920s, or even now in parts of it still, that steam runs parts of the city. But as we got really busy, we had to put extra tables, an extra row of tables in, and it didn't go over so well with that coming up around people while they were eating. So we don't run that hardly ever. So yes, Angie.
Why did you want to get in the restaurant business?
Oh my, wanting to get in the restaurant business, that's a great question. I would say that sorry, my phone's going crazy. I would say I always wanted to be in business, you know, just basically because it was, I actually had one of my goals was to be able to not only own my own business, but have the freedom that goes along with that once you get to a certain point. I remember that I grew up on a dairy farm, so my parents weren't able to necessarily make my sporting events and everything, so I always wanted to be able to, if my kids played sports, I wanted to have the freedom to be able to go to their games and not miss their games. I also wanted my kids to remember me playing. So Angie mentioned I travel and play softball around the country, and fortunately now they're 22 and 17 and they remember. And actually this last weekend was a monumental occasion for me. My son actually played on the same team with me for the weekend in a tournament, so that was a really cool event to be able to have that happen. But I drove up on the strip after getting fired from Silver Dollar City, and I actually, a couple of local guys, Ron Jett and Larry Smith, fired me back in the day, and I thank them every day for firing me from there. I was working at Fire in the Hole and might still be there actually if they hadn't fired me. But I drove up on the strip and got a job waiting tables at a restaurant. This was about 1989, and I loved it. And growing up on a dairy farm, I really wanted to just, I wanted to work all the time because that's what we did. And I had a shift waiting tables that started at 4 o'clock every day, made great money, but really didn't know what to do during the day. So I came in and bus tables and wash dishes and just did whatever they let me do all day long. And that's really how I learned the business and how I started to like the business for sure. And this is the 25th year for Whippersnappers now, and a lot of the others have been 17 or 18 years, but that's kind of the basic story. You know, I actually, in between there, I was working at the city of Hollister as a building inspector and health officer. Worst job in the world, at least I thought it was, until actually, now that I think about it, I saw the guy that had to go around when Table Rock Dam was built and tell everybody that their property was going to be underwater and there's nothing they could do about it. You know, that job would have really stunk. I would have hated to have that job. The City of Hollister is the first time that they implemented planning and zoning, so I had to go around telling people, I was 19 years old, so I had to go around telling people twice my age how to build stuff and that they couldn't do this, and it was pretty bad. Yeah, it was a bad job. So I'm pretty sure the black marks from me leaving that job are still in the parking lot. It was a bad job. But that's really how I got into it. I actually, after getting moved up into management, I built a 76-room motel in 1991, and so, Jay, guys, I was in the motel business for a little while. 76 rooms, Whispering Hills Inn. Actually built that in 1991, and
I did not know that.
Yep, sold it at the end of the year. So there wasn't anything down there then, not even BT Bones or
Oh my gosh, I
any
did
of
not
that
know
stuff.
that.
Yep. Yeah, that was before you were born, Anthony. So, yeah, so that's really how thank you for asking. That's really how I got started in the restaurant business, basically. Yeah, and just really wanting to be in business, you know, and